Forget everything you thought you knew about how vampires are created. Before the Victorian legends, before the European folklore, there were the first bites, wrapped in a terrifying secret that history tried to bury. We are unearthing the long-lost rituals, the dark, ancient practices that gave rise to the lineage of the undead. Prepare yourself to discover the chilling truth behind the first vampires. They say the first curse fell upon a man marked by God. But what about those who came after? Those who were not cursed, but who chose the darkness. To understand the origin of the lineage, we must look to the patient zero of theological vampirology, Cain. In apocryphal texts and the most hermetic cult traditions, Cain was not merely the first murderer. He was the first to discover that blood contained power. By spilling the blood of his brother Abel onto the earth, he committed the ultimate sacrifice. The divine curse that followed, the aversion to sunlight, the insatiable thirst, and the sterile immortality, was not just a punishment, was an alchemical transmutation of the soul. He became the Dark Father, the accidental progenitor of a species that was meant to be unique, banished to the land of Nod, east of Eden. Cain wandered in absolute darkness. Ancient texts suggest that Nod was not just a geographic location, but a state of spiritual existence, a plane of shadows where life did not flourish. There, isolated from God and humanity, the first vampire learned to manipulate vitae, the vital energy contained within stolen blood. He did not need complex rituals. He was the ritual. The curse ran pure in his veins, a primary source of profane power. But Cain was alone, and the solitude of an immortal is an abyss that stares back at you. Here lies the great question that haunts occult historians and modern vampirologists. If Cain was the only one marked directly by divinity, how did other ancestral bloodlines emerge around the globe? How do we explain the Jiangshi in ancient China, or the Camazotz in Mesoamerican mythologies? Did the Dark Father physically travel across all these continents, spreading his cursed seed? Or did others, envying the eternal might of the first murderer, try to replicate the curse through artificial means? The most disturbing answer suggests that Cain's immortality did not remain a divine accident for long. It became a trophy to be coveted. Kings, sorcerers, and priests of forgotten cults looked into the darkness of Nod, not with fear, but with envy. And it was this envy that began the era of the progenitor rituals. While Cain lived his immortality as an unbearable burden, watching empires rise and fall like sandcastles, a distinct class of mortals began to notice patterns in the dark. They were not outcasts or exiles. They were the elite of the ancient world, witch kings of Sumeria, high priests of Babylon, occultists of the first Egyptian dynasties. For these men, the curse of Cain was not a divine punishment, but the supreme form of evolution. They envied the power of the first vampire. They desired the eternity of the flesh, not the salvation of the spirit. The objective of these first blood cults was audacious and blasphemous: to obtain the mark of Cain without God's judgment. They sought a synthetic immortality, a way to bypass divine morality and seize the power of Nod through sheer force of will and magic. The candidate for progenitor could not be an ordinary man. The human mind is fragile. Faced with eternity, it tends to fragment into madness. Therefore, they sought the perfect sociopath, the absolute narcissist. Individuals who already viewed themselves as gods on earth, possessing a spiritual strength or a total lack of empathy, robust enough to anchor the soul to the body, even after biological death. In the depths of temples dedicated to chthonic deities, like Ereshkigal or Nergal, the selection process was brutal. It was not enough to desire power. The blood needed to accept the transformation. Fragmented records suggest that hundreds of aspirants died in agony during the preliminary stages. The cult sought a specific resonance in the bloodline, recessive genetic or spiritual traits that could withstand alchemical corruption. It was a search for the golden vessel, a body capable of processing corrupted vitae without instantly decomposing. Once identified, the chosen one underwent a process of inverse purification. They were subjected to prolonged fasting, deprived of sunlight for months, and fed small doses of neurotoxic poisons and the blood of natural predators. The goal was to kill the humanity inside them, cell by cell, thought by thought, before the final ritual even began. They needed to be empty, to be filled with darkness. Unlike Cain, who was transformed in an instant of divine fury, these new progenitors were sculpted patiently by the hand of man, transforming into monsters before they ever took their first bite. This was the great transgression of antiquity, the attempt to replicate, through occult science, what was created by the pure supernatural. They believed that by following precise formulas and extreme rites of passage, they could create a lineage of vampires that answered not to a curse, but to a choice. But as we will see, trying to imitate the work of God, or His punishment, demands a price that human blood was not made to pay. The stage was set not for a miracle, but for an abomination. To perform the transmutation, the environment needed to be an affront to life. If Cain was forged in the natural desolation of Nod, the occultists needed to create an artificial Nod within their crypts. Cold stone altars were erected over corrupted ley lines, utilizing principles of inverted sacred geometry to create a spiritual vacuum. The objective was to construct a dead zone, a metaphysical blind spot where the light of creation could not penetrate. In this hermetic space, the laws of human biology were suspended, clearing the path to rewrite the code of life through advanced hemomancy. Without the direct intervention of God to curse the soul, the sorcerers needed to corrupt it manually. The alchemy of blood did not seek the philosopher's stone, but the eternal negrito, the putrefaction that precedes resurrection. Complex rituals were performed to separate the soul from the natural cycle of reincarnation or judgment. They utilized mixtures of mercury, viper venom, and the ashes of the restless dead to anchor the spirit into the dying flesh. It was a desperate attempt to prevent the soul from escaping at the moment of death, imprisoning it within a body that was already growing cold, forcing it to use blood as its only fuel. But human will and chemistry were not enough to generate immortality. It lacked the supernatural spark, the X factor that Cain possessed by divine right. To fill this void, the rituals required the infusion of extraplanar essences. Forbidden texts speak of pacts with chthonic entities, lesser demons of the Babylonian underworld, or hungry spirits of Vedic mythology. The blood of these entities, or an alchemical substance that emulated their vibration, was prepared. It was not human blood. It was a black ichor, a spiritual antimatter designed to replace the bone marrow of the aspiring progenitor. Here lies the most grotesque revelation. The first bite in these rituals was not an act of predation, but a surgical magical procedure. There was no previous vampire to pass on the curse. The high priest, utilizing a hollow ceremonial dagger or needles crafted from the bones of predators, pierced the chosen one's carotid. But instead of draining blood, they injected the profane mixture directly into the bloodstream. It was the inoculation of the original serpent's venom. The bite, therefore, was born as an injection of darkness, a deliberate act of systemic contamination to force metamorphosis. After the inoculation, silence fell upon the chamber. The candidate's heart stopped. Clinically, he was dead. This was the critical moment, known in the grimoires as the chrysalis of night. The body fought against the invasion of the demon essence. The soul screamed to be free, but was chained by the alchemy of the ritual. For 3 days and 3 nights, a profane mockery of the Christian resurrection that would come millennia later, the body lay motionless. The priests waited, watching for signs of decomposition. If the flesh began to rot, the ritual had failed. But if the skin turned cold and hard like marble, then a new predator was about to awaken. The awakening of a ritual-created progenitor was a cataclysmic event, very different from the melancholic solitude of Cain. When the first murderer awoke to his new nature, he was alone in the desert, confused and afraid. But these new monsters, they woke up surrounded by fanatics. The first sensation was not fear, but an overwhelming hunger, a predatory voracity that eclipsed any remnant of human memory. Before them, there was no empty vastness of naught, but rows of servants and slaves. Volunteers prepared to be the first meals. The birth was celebrated with a banquet of warm blood, sealing the creature's pact with the darkness. It is at this point that vampirology establishes the sacred and terrible hierarchy of generations. Cain, the Dark Father, represents the first generation, absolute power, the undiluted source. The progenitors created through these forbidden rituals, whether in Babylon, Vedic India, or the Americas, were not his equals, because they were imperfect copies, forged by magic and not by divine decree. They occupied what we call the second or third generation. They were gods to mortals, yes, possessing titanic strength and devastating mental powers. But compared to Cain, they were merely distorted shadows. Still, their blood carried enough potency to create their own offspring, starting a domino effect of damnation. The tragedy of these rituals is that human magic is flawed. While Cain was a perfect entity in his curse, imitation rituals often left spiritual scars. A ritual focused too much on brute strength created lineages of savage, uncontrollable warriors. A ritual focused on the preservation of the mind generated vampires that were manipulative but physically fragile. This is how the different families or clans of vampires began to emerge. Not by biological design, but by the errors and specific obsessions of each cult that tried to replicate the first bite. Each lineage carries to this day the factory mark of the flawed ritual that originated it. Over time, the Middle East became too small for so many alpha predators. The territorial nature of the vampire, inherited from Cain's jealousy of Abel, forced a bloody diaspora. The new progenitors, now lords of their own night courts, migrated. They took their newly created children with them, spreading the curse to the farthest corners of the earth. This is how similar legends appeared in cultures that never met: the Strigoi in Romania, the Asan Bosum in Africa, the Nukakubi in Japan. Different faces, different names, but all sharing the same rotten root: humanity's desperate attempt to steal immortality, only to be enslaved by it. Today, when we watch movies or read novels about vampires, we see rules that seem arbitrary. The aversion to sunlight, the fear of holy symbols, the need for an invitation. But under the lens of the genesis of Cain and the progenitor rituals, it all makes terrifying sense. The sun is not merely an ultraviolet reaction. In occult theology, the sun is the eye of God, the face of the Creator who witnessed the first crime. The vampire's skin burns because creation itself rejects its unnatural existence. He who carries stolen blood cannot withstand the gaze of the one who gives life. It is a spiritual allergy, transmitted from generation to generation, a genetic memory of the original banishment. And what about the thirst, the hunger that defines the creature's existence? It is not merely biological, it is a curse of repetition. When Cain killed Abel, he stole a future that did not belong to him. He severed a lineage. The bloodlust is the eternal echo of that moment. Every time a vampire, whether an ancient lord or a neophyte created yesterday, sinks their fangs into a mortal, they are trying to fill the void left by the soul that was lost at the dawn of time. They drink the life of others because life itself has been denied to them. It is a futile and eternal attempt to steal the warmth they can no longer generate on their own. In the end, the truth about the first bite is more disturbing than any demon summoned in Babylonian rituals. The true origin of the vampire lies not only in magic or divine curse, but in human nature. The original first bite was not taken with teeth, but with a stone. It was the act of violence of one brother against another. Every vampire that exists, from the progenitors forged in dark temples to the urban legends of today, is a living monument to this original sin. They are the dark reflection of our own capacity to destroy others, just to ensure our own survival. We have unearthed the rituals. We have mapped the bloodline. But remember, blood has memory. And now that you know the truth about the origin of the undead, perhaps the night seems a little darker. If you have heard the call of the Ark of Mysteries, subscribe and join our search. For there are even older secrets sleeping beneath our feet, waiting for the next excavation.